stand in the darkness. It's now May, but this all started in December just after her 30th birthday. All of a sudden, she became distant and didn't care. I didn't think much of it at first. She just seemed kind of depressed, which was odd for her. Once we talked about it, she claimed she wasn't happy and was in a funk. She would get over it. It would just take her a little time to readjust. That this just happens every once in a while. With 2 children, 9 and 3, we didn't really spend too much time alone, and our jobs at the time made it so we would only catch each other for a very limited time each day. So, I kicked it into gear. I was like, okay, let's go out. Took the kids over to my parents' house and went to dinner. Everything seemed fine. Then she tells me she felt forced to go with me. Ouch. Then came, it's too late, which seemed weird because when I asked her if she still loved me and wanted to be with me, she said yes. From then on, things just got rottener. Guy from work she did a project with and later started hanging out with. One occasion I told her I didn't want her to go with him in this plane ride, but when I said I didn't want her to go, she started crying, saying she had no friends and she always stuck at home. So, I said okay fine, go. Then it turned into hanging out with this guy and staying out till 2 to 3 a.m. First time I panicked a whole bunch, called and texted her zillion times. Her response was I just want a relaxing night out, and I was making her feel guilty. Then shortly after that she told me she needed a break. Shortly after that it was an actual breakup. It's been a little over 3 months since the breakup. We are still married, but for how long I don't know. Not sure what to do. I have contacted an attorney but haven't made an appointment. It's quite the pickle. We own a home together, have 2 children, and also her disabled father lives with us. I have a pretty lousy paying job, trying to find a new job, so I know I couldn't float the house by myself. We always relied on each other. It's odd, lots of silence and avoidance when we are together. She also hasn't mentioned separation or divorce. Some days she walks out the door and says, I'm leaving for a little bit. Leaves me with the boys and does whatever. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy mentioned above. We also rely on my parents to watch the kid on the weekends while we work. Everything just feels wrong. I have been trying at the 180. Seems she started it long before I did. I have been trying to detach as much as possible. I love her and her family, which I lived with during my early 20s. It is horrifying. I don't want to sound like a chump, but when she leaves, I find it hard not to fall apart. I keep it away from my 9-year-old. Lock myself in the bathroom and run a tub for my 3-year-old. This may be karma for my past mistakes. I was involved in an affair about 9 years ago. This sucks. I have been around for my kids as much as possible. In my mind, this could be the final months of everyone together in the house. I'm really into powerlifting, so I'm training a few guys in my garage gym for free. Counts as an act of kindness. Feels good. What do I do when she just up and leaves? Or says she's going to leave? One time while she was in her car about to leave, I pulled the car door open and told her no one here wants her to leave. She stayed, didn't say a damn word to me. Just played with the kids. She was mad but didn't say anything. I know for a fact it's been physical for a while. I found a presence in the bathroom trash one day when I pulled it out to pick up trash in one of my kids' rooms. Being kind of spineless and in shock, I just locked myself in my room and sat there for hours staring at a black TV screen. One hard part about all this is she never complained really about anything. Gave me no indication she wasn't happy with our marriage. Then she hits me with, we don't spend any time together. It's too late. We didn't put enough effort into the relationship and she has pent up resentment. By the way, we don't act married at all and haven't since this has been going down. When she said she needed a break, she decided to sleep on the couch. I do get a collie king to myself. I thought affair immediately, but when I asked if it was someone else, even the guy by name, she of course denied it. Her dad kind of stays to himself. He is sound of mind for sure. I haven't said anything to him and he hasn't said anything to me. I'm pretty sure he would like to remain out of anything that has to do with our relationship. The only thing I have told my oldest is that this is not how married people act. I don't want you to think this is what marriage is. I was in a hard limbo when she put us on a break, then the limbo continues. I don't kiss her back at all, haha. I would like to save this marriage, but doesn't it have to be her idea? I want our family to be complete again. Dirt on him, possibly if it's actually the guy I think it is. He was involved in a racially motivated incident years ago with some friends. No one was charged with anything, but they put a bike lock around a black student's neck once and attempted a second time but failed. Also, him and his friends involved would harass the student. Thing is, I have no hard evidence. To me it's painfully obvious. Maybe just straight up ask her. Though my kids don't look like it, they are mixed race. I'm Hispanic and she's white. I don't want my kids around a racist. Nothing I detest more. She has been checked out for a while. What's a good plan of action? Some of her family is visiting from out of town this week. Don't really want to ruin it. Meet with an attorney, or several. Find proof of the affair or skip it and file. Her reaction to being served would probably be her not even caring at all. I call them my men in training. During all this I haven't shown them that a man doesn't put up with this. I doubt she would want to re-enter the relationship. Can't see her running back to me. I would like to see it, but again doubt it. The consoling and all would have to be her idea and she would have to be truly remorseful. Zero trust as of now, a given. It's hard to let go of someone you have had in your life for half of it, aha. For me this is terrible. I've just in the past 6 weeks or so been able to eat and sleep like normal. I need my spine and balls back. I can't live like this anymore. This trap, this prison. She's made the decision to leave the relationship. I have to take the appropriate actions to leave the marriage. During my affair I'm sure she told her family and probably close friends, but I never knew, no one said anything about it. EO and I didn't hide it for very long. We worked together, so she moved stores and also moved in with her dad. We out ourselves. The turning point for me was when another man came along, who was a close friend of mine, and at first, I was said okay fine, they can have each other. We had one kid at the time and he knew this other guy. A week or so goes by and something snapped. I didn't want to accept it for some reason. I texted my wife and told her we needed to talk to buy me some beer. So, I told her I wanted to get back together and that I knew we could still be happy. My wife thought I was going to tell her I was moving out to be with this O. We lived together during my affair too. My wife took me up on it and hooked up immediately. I called the OW the day after and told her it was over. Man, she was mad. For days she called just to cuss me out and yell, leaving a good number of voicemails too. So, my wife and I have been here twice. Once on my end and now once on hers. The situation at home only seemed to worsen. My wife's distance continued to grow and her relationship with the other man seemed to strengthen. I couldn't ignore the fact that our marriage was falling apart, but it was difficult to accept. The children were beginning to notice the tension between us, and I worried about the impact it would have on them. My wife's behavior changed dramatically. She was no longer the loving, attentive partner I once knew. It was as if a stranger had taken her place. She spent more and more time away from home, and when she was there, she was cold and distant. The pain of her rejection was almost unbearable. One evening, when she returned home late from another night out, I couldn't hold back any longer. The anger and frustration that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. I confronted her about the other man and demanded to know the truth. She denied everything at first, but eventually broke down and admitted to the affair. The pain of her betrayal was almost too much to bear. We argued long into the night, with accusations and recriminations flying back and forth. I felt a mixture of emotions, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, but ultimately, I knew that I couldn't continue living like this. I asked her to leave, and she reluctantly agreed. The following day, my wife packed her bags and moved out of our family home. It was an emotionally charged day, with both of us struggling to hold back tears as we said our goodbyes. I knew that I had to stay strong for the sake of our children, but it was difficult to watch their mother walk away. As the door closed behind her, I couldn't help but wonder if we had made the right decision. In the weeks that followed, I began to take the necessary steps to end our marriage. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney and started gathering the required documents. The process was long, complicated, and emotionally draining. There were endless forms to fill out, meetings to attend, and decisions to make. Throughout the divorce proceedings, I tried to keep things as amicable as possible for the sake of our children. We agreed on joint custody and worked together to create a parenting plan that would best serve their needs. Despite the pain and heartache, I knew that it was important for us to remain civil for their sake. The months following our separation were some of the most challenging of my life. I struggled to come to terms with the end of my marriage and the loss of the life we had built together. I spent many sleepless nights questioning my decisions, reliving the pain of her betrayal, and mourning the loss of our relationship. My children were also affected by the divorce, and I did my best to support them through the emotional turmoil. I tried to be there for them, to listen to their concerns and provide a stable, loving environment. It was a difficult time for all of us, but we leaned on each other for support. As the dust began to settle, I slowly started to rebuild my life. I focused on my kids, my job, and my own well-being. My comment, clearly with all the infidelity, this is not the marriage either of you wants to be in. Stick a fork in it. Story 2. Betrayal of L. Hi everyone. So, I've been dating a man for about a year and a half, who is separated from his wife. I was separated as well when we met and finalized my divorce in December. We moved in together in November with the expectation that he will be moving forward with the divorce, and I relocated to the area he lived in so he could be close to his job. He is a business owner. Everything is great in our relationship. He is very kind and loving towards me, goes above and beyond to make me happy, and we have a lot in common. He has integrated me into his life, family, and friends. I am very happy with everything except for the fact that he hasn't filed for divorce yet. His wife does not want a divorce. Every time he tries to talk to her about dividing up assets, etc., she becomes hysterical, saying she will instead wait for him to come back to her. He assures her he is not coming back but says all she has in her life is the hope they can still work things out. They do not have kids. He has been waiting for her to come around and accept reality so they can move forward with filing, but it's just not happening. I told him to just file, but he said he'd rather do this amicably and he is willing to give her whatever she wants in the divorce. He doesn't want to deal with lawyers and courts and wants to make sure she is emotionally okay with everything. He has been encouraging her to start dating other people so she can move on, but she says absolutely not. She is waiting for him to come home. He is now saying he wants to buy a house with me. I don't know how that would work since he is still financially and legally linked to her. I don't know how to approach the conversation because it always ends up in a fight. Any advice? He has admitted the business assets and financial loss is a factor, but primarily he wants to move forward with things without being a jerk about it. He views the divorce as nothing but a legal technicality, which is why he doesn't see it as a priority. He is a very sentimental person, and I think when she cries and begs him, it tugs at his heartstrings, and he doesn't want to hurt her by forcing her through the process. He doesn't see how it would harm me for him to take his time, that him not being divorced doesn't affect me or prevent us from living our lives together. In his mind, he has left the marriage and found someone who is a better fit. He left her because he thought he could change her and learned the hard way that he couldn't. He is a very physical person. He needs a certain level of affection, intimacy, and emotional connection. She is reserved and would have slept together once a month. She didn't want to connect with his family and doesn't have any friends, and he resented that. He married her because he found her to be a good person and thought they could somehow add the missing components. They had gone to numerous counseling sessions and she wouldn't do any of the homework the counselor gave them. As far as bills go, we are splitting everything 50-50. There is no way I would foot the bill for him. About 3 months ago he told me it will be wrapped up by the beginning of 2020. My divorce took 6 months and my ex and I were both cooperative and motivated, so at this point I don't see how this timeline will be met. He sees her about once a month when he sets up a time to meet with her to go over how to divide property. Each time she gets emotional and uncooperative, so he leaves and waits it out. He has at times helped with taking care of the cats or snow removal for her, as they still own a house jointly. I don't think I'd want a man who would just walk out on someone and leave them in a lurch. I would like to eventually marry him, but I won't be ready for marriage for a few years. I just turned 43, so children are not likely in my future unless we adopt it. It's something I think we'd both be open to, but I'd be fine without children as well. We have one joint bank account that we each put just enough money into to pay bills and rent. We were both separated when we met. I know she gets hysterical because I snooped on his phone from time to time, and what I have read in his text messages supports that. I do think he wants a divorce, but he wanted her to find a new guy first, so he felt like it was an equal situation since he has somebody. He feels it is still his responsibility to help her with the house because it's still technically his house and he's still paying for it. He makes twice what she makes. So, if I am second fiddle to him, why is he taking me on vacations with his family, living with me and wanting to buy a house with me? Wouldn't he be doing all this with her and just having me on the side if she was his priority? He was hoping she would start dating, as that would allow her to move on emotionally and be okay with the divorce, so that they can amicably work out a settlement rather than her fighting him every step of the way with lawyers and courts. Since she's still stuck on him, she will throw every wrench she can into the process to keep it from happening. This is what he's trying to prevent. I think he's being stupid for thinking she's ever going to give him the green light, but that's what he's been holding out hope for. One thing about him is he is very stubborn with pretty much everything. He thinks he knows everything and has to be proven wrong. My ex was cooperative because he despised my guts at that point, and our divorce took 6 months through a mediator and could have been 5 months, but I was traveling for part of the time. Regarding her happiness, she is completely miserable, so I don't see how he can be providing for her happiness over mine. And regarding this being an affair, I'm not sure I understand that. Nothing about this is secret. Isn't it normal for separated people to date? I was not legally divorced either when we started dating. Does that mean he was an affair partner? As far as him still being emotionally involved with her, I think it's guilt more than anything else. But honestly, if that's what holding things up, he needs to get over it. I'm not going to date a guy indefinitely who feels too guilty to get a divorce. He despised me because I pulled away from him and slept in a separate bedroom for almost 2 years. He was abusive, and it took a long time for me to realize it. I didn't handle things well, I didn't know how to, but he never once took responsibility for anything. He contributed towards the demise of our marriage. I've decided I am not buying a house with him, so we will not have assets. I will let him know this and hope this lights a fire under him to start the divorce process. If not, I will be moving out at the end of the year. My ex was very critical and called me awful things on a regular basis, like idiot, retard, loser, etc. Despite this, I felt tremendous guilt and could not get the courage to leave. I was in counseling for 2 years and it got to the point where he left me. He wanted the divorce and basically threw the paperwork at me to complete and file. This is why I have some sympathy for my BF's situation. I am asking him to have the courage I did not have myself. I did learn in counseling how to set boundaries, but for some reason I am not putting them into action. I am afraid he will see me as being selfish and unsupportive, give up on me and leave, and going along with it. Whenever I bring up the topic, I have a hard time refraining from addressing things in a nasty, accusatory manner, and he feels attacked and says that it seems like it's all about my ego and not about my love for him. He says if I love him, then I'll be patient and supportive as he does this in the manner and timeline that he needs to do it. He is looking at the big picture, and it's worth waiting to achieve a better end result for our financial future, and doesn't want all his savings drained in legal fees. He says this is his journey and I will wait with him and be supportive through it if I truly love him. He says he would do the same for me. He points out it took me 2 years before action was taken with my divorce, so it's kind of selfish for me to expect him to rush things. The main issue for me is that we can't move forward in our relationship, like buying a house, while he's still financially connected to her. He asked me to put the mortgage and deed in my name and then add him in later. I don't want to do that because that's allowing him to buy more time to drag his feet. I sympathize with him on his trepidation because again, I dragged my feet for 2 years. I guess at this point I will let him know he needs to file at the very least before we buy something, and I need legal proof she is not entitled to any part of that house. If he is not filed by September, when we moved in together, then I will need to find my own place to live. He gave me the timeline that this will all be settling by the time 2020 rolls around, and I did agree to that. She was not emotionally unstable prior to him leaving her. However, he referred to her as an odd duck in the fact that she was extremely attached to her mother who died, and wasn't really interested in forming relationships with others, did not have any friends, or even seem interested in being close with the rest of her family. They met on a dating site and an acquaintance of hers created her profile, as she was not one to seek out dating partners. She was only scary when we were leaving her. I do have evidence of her threatening suicide as it was in text messages I read. She made a comment, "Don't worry, you'll get everything you want," when one day very soon I close my eyes and never open them again. He went to the house the other week to grab his remaining things. There was an item he thought he brought back and was looking all over our apartment for it. He went back to the house and saw she had put it outside for him because he left it there. So, he went inside to see the cats. My dogs were written into my separation agreement and ultimately divorce agreement. I have full custody, but he still contributed to vet bills and would take them if I needed to travel. That being said, I have not enforced this because I prefer not to engage with him, and I am financially stable enough to afford their bills, and I have my BF to watch them when I travel. I would not have a problem if BF continued supporting the care of the cats after their divorce. I would rather that than 99% of the men out there who are paying child support, swapping kids back and forth and communicating to and fighting with exes on a regular basis about kids, not to mention step-parenting responsibilities I don't want. I guess I'm holding on to actions that do signal his goal is a future with me, such as the fact he is clearing his stuff out of the marital home and wanting to start the process of buying a house with me. Those are not the actions of someone whose intent is returning to the wife. In the case with my BF, he does not dislike the wife or feel she did anything wrong to him. He feels she is a good person, but they were mismatched, which is why he was unhappy. He wants to make sure she is emotionally okay before moving forward with the divorce, addition to making sure nothing crazy happens with the finances. He wants me to support him during this process, which I told him I would. However, I think my patience is being abused at this point, because I expected some real action by now. He says he is ready, but she is making a case that he's being insensitive to try to push her suddenly through the process while she's sick. She says, why is it suddenly a rush? So hopefully he gives her this and doesn't accept any more stalling. Otherwise, I'm out. He has admitted to giving her hope to temporarily ease her pain when he thought she was going over the edge. He said he realizes this is wrong and more harmful in the long run. What makes this so hard is everything about our relationship is so great and we are very compatible otherwise. We share many of the same interests and worldviews. He doesn't have children yet, was not a perpetual bachelor, a very rare find when you're dating middle-aged men. We are very physically compatible. He is loving and affectionate, always holding my hand, rubbing my back, kissing my hand, etc. He takes care of my dogs for me without me having to ask. He is intellectual and sophisticated. If any of these attributes was missing, I would not be putting up with this. Last night he arranged a belated birthday dinner for me at a Thai restaurant, with his mother and brothers. They all brought gifts for me. I wouldn't think a man who viewed as nothing but a side piece would be integrating me into his family and life like he is doing. That being said, I'm still sticking to October 1st deadline. He doesn't know about the deadline. He needs to be close to his business so he can come and go throughout the day, and I didn't have anything I needed to be close to, so that's why I'm the one who relocated. However, if I'm going to be living somewhere on my own, I'm not going to live in this area. I've spoken to quite a few divorced men over the past few weeks, friends, coworkers, etc. In every case, it's the wife who did the actual filing, even when it was the husband who wanted the divorce. This was even true in my situation. What I can tell is my BF wants the wife to take an active part in the process rather than it being a unilateral action on his part. It makes him feel better that she comes to terms with the fact that the marriage was not a fit and it's in both of their best interest. File. I know this seems like a fantasy, but so many things men do will never make sense to me. This is the way that he wants to do it, and whenever he shares news of his attempts to put that plan in motion, I am attacking him and he feels like he doesn't have a partner in me to support him through this. I had the benefit of a spouse who wanted to move things along at a quick pace where he does not. So, if I moved out, it's very possible he might feel compelled to force himself to file to save our relationship. But I don't want him to do something in a manner that doesn't feel right to him and then possibly resent me for it down the line. That doesn't mean I am going to keep waiting. This is really difficult for him, and I get the sense that men have an even more difficult time having the emotional tools to execute this kind of thing. My BF is a very sensitive, compassionate type of person, and his emotions do tend to overshadow his ability to reason. I'm just trying not to judge him, especially since I did a lot of the same things he is doing. I strung my ex-H along for 2 years until he got fed up, ended up in an IA, and then pulled the plug. I try to think back and remember how difficult this was for me and try to empathize with him without throwing my life away. Next time he brings up how she is telling him she has other priorities right now and doesn't have time to discuss division of assets, I will remind him of what you wrote. And if still no action, I leave. Also wanted to add, before I told him I was not going to buy a house, we met with a real estate agent. He was explaining his situation to the agent, who then turned around and kept giving him unsolicited advice on how to keep her from taking his money in the divorce. He's had numerous divorced men telling him he's going to get screwed over financially. Last night he shared with me a recap of his conversation with the wife. He reached out to her to schedule a date with the mediator, and they ended up getting into an argument because she is hysterical, claiming he doesn't give a crap about her and just wants to get her out of his life and let her rot. And this divorce is extremely hard for her and causing her health issues. In addition to the eye infection, she ended up with a UTI and now some other illness because of the stress. It's taking a toll on her physically. So, this ended up in an argument between me and him because I started going off on him about how he needs to move forward. He said the main issue is guilt and his concern for his wife's physical and emotional health. He's not going to just plow through with his own plans without considering her needs, and asked if I valued that about him. I said I did, and he said I sure didn't show it. I only seem concerned about myself. He thought he'd have my support as he navigates this in a way that keeps things amicable and minimizes the pain she is going through, and all I do is fight with him about it. So, I guess he is not filing anytime very soon. I talked to a girlfriend of mine last night, and she is having a house built, and when it's ready for her and her partner to move in, she's putting her current place up for rent. It's in another city about an hour and a half from me, and it won't be ready until at least the end of Oct, and I'm considering it. I'll need to stay here until it's ready though, but I at least have a place to go near a friend. I am also considering maybe buying a house up the street and putting the whole thing in my name, and with my money. That's probably the better situation for me financially. However, it ties me to this area, and if we are no longer together anymore, then I'm not sure I'd stay here. It's one of the few locations around here where you can buy a nice affordable home that's not in a slum. But his name will not be on the mortgage. Either way, I have options for moving out. I really do think he feels responsible for his wife's emotional state, and I do really think he has every intention of divorcing her. From all the texts and emails I have read, there is not one reason to believe he's having any physical relationship with her or that he wants one. I know that if she said she was ready to move forward, he would get things rolling in a heartbeat. He's allowing his guilt to take control. But I can't control him or his wife, only myself. I now have appealing options with regards to moving out, so I feel better about having that leverage. Going to look at the house tomorrow. The stepfather passing has produced another delay. He asked her to start the process of splitting things, and she snapped back at him at how insensitive to push something like that when someone just died. We talked a lot this weekend. For the first time, I felt like we were trying to understand one another without simply defending our position and attacking. I can tell he wants a future with me, and I do believe if I walked out the door today that he would do what he needed to do to keep me. But if he did that, the divorce would turn ugly and maybe he would resent me for it. He expressed how important it is to him for this to be as amicable as possible, and wants to know he tried everything first and wants my support, within reason. Within reason means that future illnesses, infections, or recoveries are not acceptable excuses. He has agreed. I will observe, and if it's not happening, then I leave. I don't think his guilt and concern for her has anything to do with romantic love. He said he married her because he thought he could help her. He talks about her like she's a niece whose parents died and he took responsibility for her development and well-being. In a sense, that's how he always saw her. He said part of why he married her was he thought he could help her, but eventually realized she wasn't going to change and didn't have the tools to give him what he needed. An update: he has been separating finances with the wife and went to the courthouse to pick up the divorce papers. As I mentioned before, he really wanted to buy a house. I said if we found a house we really wanted, I would agree to buy it and put it in my name while waiting for his divorce to finalize, with the expectation he would be filed by the time of closing. That would give me control over the house and would not drag me into his divorce. I made him show me all his bank and credit card accounts for proof things were separated. So, I went ahead and signed the contract for the house. I started having reservations about everything and decided to back out the night before the inspection. Canceled the inspection and the contract. He was really upset with me that after all that I changed my mind and canceled. He is barely speaking to me and says he doesn't want to go to my sister's for Thanksgiving. 2-hour drive. He probably will hold off on filing now because of this. So there really is no update as he has not filed, and now we are not speaking to each other. I was in his car and found the divorce papers in a folder, partially filled out. I know it doesn't mean anything until it's filed, but it is a step, along with the separation of accounts. I haven't brought up the topic since letting him know I changed my mind about the house. Few months later, it's been a while, but I wanted to share an update, finally a real update. He has filed. The paperwork required a lot of his wife's personal info that he didn't have, such as her insurance info, driver's license, etc. It took him a while to get it from her, and she even took part in filling out the paperwork. After going through all this, I do know that the delays, other than gathering the details, were primarily out of genuine concern for his wife's emotional and physical well-being. And I went to the courthouse with him, so I know it actually took place. A year later, we bought a house together and our relationship is stronger than ever. The only concern that has come up recently is that I know he feels pity for her. She's had some fairly minor health problems but has not been able to manage her anxiety over it. Was diagnosed with an ovarian cyst and just panics that it must be cancer. She has issues in general coping with life's challenges and managing her anxiety. Boyfriend wants to be friends with her and said he would like to grab dinner with her one night, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. I am friends with my ex, however I don't hang out with him if it's just the two of us. However, I have spent time with my ex's family without my boyfriend included. Boyfriend's ex still is resentful of him ending the marriage and of course resentful that he is in a happy relationship with me. I do trust him entirely that he has no feelings for her other than wanting to be her friend, so should I not make a big deal about it? So, I don't think it's my place to tell him to completely cut off all contact, as I don't expect to cut off all contact from my ex. I exchange texts with my ex every now and then. I am still friends with his sister-in-law, and his mom still sends me Christmas and B-Day gifts. I wouldn't want my BF to insist that I stop all contact with these people who were part of my life for 20 years, so I will not be doing the same to him. That being said, I'm not really into the idea of him reaching out to her and asking her to grab dinner or discussing her health problems. That's where I draw the line. It's not like I've been begging him to stop contact and he refuses. I haven't said much about it other than I think he should stop trying to help her because she can't be helped. And he is not wanting to get back together with her or reconsidering his divorce. He truly feels pity for her since she is alone and does not have close friends and is not close with her family, although I think that fact is rather telling about her. He wants her to feel like she has a friend for support, that's it. I just think it's doing more harm than good to everyone involved, and the way I see it, friendship is something that's mutual, so the reality is that she is not his friend since this dynamic is completely one-sided and she still resents him for leaving. My comment: so, both of you have a problem with boundaries regarding exes. His are just glaringly worse. There is no need for either of you to be social with exes. I was married for 20 years. I don't talk to ex at all unless it involved the kids, who are in college, so that is hardly ever. I don't talk to his family. They are nice, they are no longer my family. You aren't married to each other, you don't let go of your past relationships. This doesn't sound healthy at all.